just always felt different, but I never could figure out why. I think I could just see through like the conditioning, the way everything is built. Like if you look at it, we're conditioned from very young just to go along with everything that you're told. Just listen. You're a child, you listen to adults and that's it. And then as you get older, you realise that you've listened so much that you've forgot what you believe and who you are really. And that, I realised that when I was about, maybe for the first time when I was about 8. I just remember thinking that that had to feel different, and looking back, that was, to feel that at 8 is quite something, because at that age you're quite young. But I remember thinking that it was bigger than what I was being told, that life's purpose is bigger than what I've been made to believe. Aye, and I remember thinking that when I was in primary school, so I would have been about 8. And since then, it's been a journey. It has been a bit of a journey. It took me until I was 22 when I discovered Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. That just changed. That just changed, like my hair's just moved there. Let me get that back. That just changed the way that I was thinking in a big way, and for the first time in a big way. Because I remember when I left school, I felt quite lost, and I couldn't really figure out why, because most people, they can't wait to leave school. But it kind of left a void in me, and I think that was because I had been conditioned so much to believe that school was everything, and school was your whole life basically, and the most important thing in your life. So it wasn't, and I ended up having a really bad depression for a year or two after that, because I kind of struggled with my identity, having left school. It felt like there was a big gap, like in life, and the worry and panic and stress about thinking, what am I going to do now? Because up until then, school wasn't my whole life experience. So that was probably the hardest time. And it was also when I did awaken it, we call it, we're awakening. But at the time, I never realised that was me awakening. That was like the peeling off the layers, if you like. Because that's what happens when you are awakening. You go through like a darkness, and that's like the layers coming off, so you can prepare like for the new. I'm just moving around a lot, sorry, and my hair's just acting up tonight. Just washed it, so it's quite puffy, but I like it puffy. Yeah, so that was probably the turning point, like in my life. I was going on quite happily at school, passing exams, being a teacher's pet, making sure I was doing what I was told, and that's all I'd ever known. So when that stopped, and there was a big gap and a void, which caused me, I think, to spiral and get myself into a bit of a knot with negative thoughts and worry, and it did. It turned out into like a dark spell. But then when I went to, because I've always been into art and design, so I'd ended up going to art school in England, and I'd never been to England. I was born in Scotland and grew up in Scotland, so I made the decision that I wanted to go and be in a different kind of city. I think subconsciously I was trying to get away from, I think I was trying to reinvent myself. At the time I never knew that. I just thought I wanted to get away and be in a new space and environment, so I went to the art school there. That never lasted long. So that's my doll there. That never lasted long because it was always art that I was into, like art as in painting, drawing, sketching. But for some reason I chose to do animation, which was all computer based, and I never had a clue what any of that was about, because I'm not really tech savvy. So I only stayed there for a few months and came back, and that kind of spiralled. That put me into a deeper kind of darkness, because I came back thinking, what am I going to do? Because I did spend most of my school years thinking that it was art I wanted to do, so when I came back I just felt completely lost. And that's when I spent a bit of time in hospital, because I couldn't really figure out my thoughts or get control of them. So I went into hospital for about 2 months it was, and it was when I was there I realised that I realised that my problems are not as big as their problems, like the other people that were in the hospital. So yeah, that was quite a short time, it was like 2 months. And then when I came out, I ended up going back into college to do quantity surveying, because I've always been really good at numbers and like architecture, so I thought if I put them together in the course, it was quantity surveying I ended up doing, and I'd done that for the year. I quite enjoyed that. I think I enjoyed like the problem solving aspect of it. It was more structured, whereas with art it's less structured, so I think I did enjoy that. So I'd done that for a year, and then I just never felt fulfilled or satisfied. So at the time I was living in my own flat, I decided to give that up and go to Australia, just because I realised I didn't want to sit in an office. It's just always been a bit grim, that thought to me, like sitting in an office. At the time I was told that I was just crazy, because the money was pretty good to be starting as a trainee within a surveying office. But I just knew that I didn't want to do that, so I travelled, and that's when things started to really change. That's when I realised and I experienced the thought that life is much bigger than what we've been told. We're told to get a good education, get a good job, get a nice house, marry a nice husband, and just have a nice family. And I always felt like that was never enough. And I always thought that it must be more than that. There must be more. And I just felt like it must be bigger than that, because the thought of that was never. I was never interested in that, like getting married and having kids. So yeah, I spent a bit of time travelling in Australia. That's when I started to really go onto my spiritual path. I discovered like various different teachers that teach law of attraction, Eckhart Tolle, Abraham Hicks, Rhonda Byrne, various different ones, Wayne Dyer. That's when I realised that I'm quite different, and I could see that my path was more spiritual at that time. So yeah, I'd spent a bit of time in Australia travelling, and then in and around Europe, like backpacking and that, and then I came back, and my interest in law of attraction just got bigger and bigger. And it's always made me feel out of place, or like I'm in the wrong places with the wrong people, feeling like I never quite fit in, because it feels as though you're you're becoming enlightened and you're awakening, but then not everybody around you is, and it's a kind of, you've got your foot in one world and then your other foot in the other, because you're in between, obviously, your old life and your new life, which is your spiritual. And I did fall away from a lot of relationships and people at that time, because it's a growth journey. It's a path where somebody once said, if you're not losing friends, then you're not growing, and I think that's true, because you do outgrow people, you outgrow places and environments. And when I look back at the amount of places that I've travelled in, I think that's what I was doing. I was outgrowing places, people and environments, and I was craving the growth, and the only way I could feel like I could experience the growth would be by travelling to places that I'd never been, and being around people that I'd never met. That felt as though it was more necessary for my growth and expansion. And I would say that travelling is probably the biggest motivator for me, because it wasn't until I travelled that I realised that I was living quite small, in a box. I think everybody lives in a box, in your wee bubble, but it just opened up my brain. But then the flip side of that is it made it quite difficult to settle back in to a routine of normal living. That was probably the biggest thing. This camera just keeps moving. But that was the biggest thing that I would say. The sky looks really nice. So yeah, the biggest thing is when you do spend a bit of time travelling, it makes routine living quite boring, to say the least. Like, trying to get back into that routine is quite tricky, because I think off the top of my head, I think I've had at least 25 different jobs over the period of I'd say between 6 and 7 years, and I think that's because I can feel there's something missing. And I think what's missing is the aspect of surprise. Like when you travel, everything's a surprise because it's new. Everything's quite unpredictable. So that took a bit of getting used to. Like going from living out of a backpack, seeing new places every day, going to new cities, new people, new food, new cultures, to just working in an office. That's quite... it takes a bit of getting used to. But I would say now, just because I did spend quite a bit of time travelling, most of it which I've done alone, it has made me feel like I fit in less